going to be very insightful talk from you on the director's role in risk management. If I We'll be starting sharp at 4, but if you allow, I would like to. I'm sure you must be knowing, introducing a brief about this initiative. So we began in 2019 December, and the intent behind this initiative on part of MCA, it was a policy advocacy from IICA. So we have implemented everything. The intent was to bring all the independent directors, both from public and private sector, on one platform by way of registration, and also continuously engage with them with a number of capacity building measures. As part of the journey, we also instituted a self assessment test for those, especially having lesser experience as KMPs or working with boards. So that's the initiative. We have received encouraging response, and now we have about 22,000 directors on board. A good part is also the C-suite level professionals who want to start their board innings. So this is about, we have, developed about 42 e-learning modules, also giving them an understanding on the regulatory framework, as also the practice aspects on board engagements, board dynamics, conflict resolution, addressing to board dilemmas, effectiveness issues, including some prominent case studies. So this is a brief about this initiative. I'm taking this opportunity so that because data bank is a data bank, those who are not registered, they might not know what sort of services we are providing in this. And as part of this is one format of capacity building, where every month we invite accomplished experts like you. So we do this activity twice a month, means once in a fortnight, where we have discussions for about 45-50 minutes, followed by Q&A. And it been more than 1.5 year, we are continuously doing it, and we have received a very good response from the industry, from within the India as well as abroad, where we had been having chairmen, managing directors, and other very seasoned directors, guiding our members. And in terms of excitement in with the members, we have every time found like 250 or maybe 300 plus participation. So people do invest their time considering value in such discussions. So today, what have you planned for, Amish? Like, you would like to go for about 45-50 minutes?
No, I'm going to actually maybe try and speak for 25-30 minutes, and I'll be happy
Okay,
to go. I think
great.
I know there are many learned colleagues. So it'll be a good. I think first of all, I'm humbled to be requested to come and share a perspective, and I would say I'm also learning. So I am by no means a expert or somebody. I'm here to share my perspective, what I have learned, and learn from all of them who are on from all the members here, and have a dialogue. I think that's my intent. So I'll be
Yeah,
happy
yeah.
to share a perspective for maybe 25-30 minutes, and then take the discussion forward in
That's
question.
perfect. That's perfect. I think the dialogue part is also going to be very encouraging, because we have seen, like, people are quite enthusiastic bringing their perspectives forward, and also questioning on some aspects wherever they have some query. So Ashish, can you can we start? It's 4 by my watch.
Yes, sir, definitely.
Okay. So a very warm welcome again, Mr. Mehta, for accepting this invite. Crisil, as we all know, is a renowned, agency working in multiple areas. like credit rating, benchmarking, analytics, research, risk services, and the solutions are empowering the industry, especially the lenders, borrowers, issuers, investors, regulators. So it has a 360 degree impact, this Crisil. And if I, with your kind permission, if I briefly introduce, I understand, as I have understood from my own search, you had been having a very accomplished career so far with quite a good amount of leadership roles. So I'll try to briefly introduce, make that effort. Just excuse me if I go wrong somewhere. So, dear friends, with a warm welcome to you all for sparing your time. I'm introducing Mr. Mehta. He's a well known figure, managing director and chief executive officer of Crisil. And in his present profile with Crisil, he is leading its Indian as well as global operations, steering its efforts to deliver high quality analytics, opinions, solutions to the companies, investors, financial institutions, and also the policymakers and governments. He has joined Crisil in October 14 as president and CFO. In July 17, he was appointed Chief Operating Officer responsible for Global Analytical Center, India Research, and also SME, Global Innovation and Excellence Hub, and the Corporate Strategy Vertical. As a Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Mehta has led Crisil's acquisitions and change agenda, creating a growth path for the business. Prior to Crisil, Mr. Mehta was CFO for Indus Towers and has, to his credit, rich experiences of more than 2 decades in telecommunications, oil and gas, FMCG, business advisory services, and has been heading the leadership roles with reputed organizations such as British Petroleum, Ernst and Young, Exxon Mobil India. He's a chartered accountant by profession and has a bachelor's degree in commerce to his credit. I welcome you again, Mr. Mehta, and pass the baton on, mic on to you for your discourse, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gupta, and good evening to everybody out here. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here, talking to all of you, and like I said, sharing a little bit about my perspective, and maybe trying to learn from all of you, in terms of having a dialogue over a period of time. So I'll try and I've got few slides which I'm going to talk through. Try and use maybe 20, 25, 30 minutes to talk through those slides, and I'll be happy to address questions and share a perspective. So, Sumit, yeah, if you can just move to the first slide. Thanks. So, I think just to begin with, talking a little bit about the evolving trends and setting the background. While the effects of the pandemic are continuing to subside, risks have actually tilted towards the geopolitical uncertainties. All of us felt that we are going to be recovering and reviving, I think, when the clouds of geopolitical uncertainties have hit us. Both these large scale disruptions have actually changed several aspects of business and lives as such, right from enhancing focus on supply chain risk to providing a further thrust to revamping operations through digital transformation, hybrid working. Various aspects of operations have undergone or are undergoing change. One of the debilitating economic consequences of the ongoing geopolitical situation has been the inflationary pressure with rising interest rates and heightened volatility, leading to uncertainties, dampening investor appetite in the global markets. The sustained inflationary pressure has actually led to rate hikes across by central banks, and to tackle it with slowing down the economic growth. While market volatility and risk of scenario have combined to weaken the capital market activity and made it very volatile across the globe. Sustainability has gained prominence across stakeholders, both in India and abroad. I mean, for instance, if you see, the government has announced important measures such as 2070 net zero goal, a sovereign green bond, and ambitious renewable energy plans. Right now, the uptake of sustainability in decision making is very piecemeal in India uh, because of lack of stewardship and fiduciary persuasion to improve the ESG quotient. Globally, banks and financial institutions are sharpening their focus on addressing credit and non-financial risks by leveraging technology and domain expertise. We, along with our clients, have taken big steps on automation, digitization, transformation to drive customer experience. A critical piece in all of this is the required skilled talent. And over the last year, demand for skilled talent, especially in the niche areas of technology, credit research, transformation, has gone up manifold. And this need for business to develop and manage talent is increasingly being discussed and deliberated at company boards. If we move to the next slide, on the macro environment and the impact of geopolitics, let me try and address a few trends that we are seeing playing out in 2022. We see a slowdown in growth and high inflation, both globally and in India. As we were recovering out of the pandemic, we were trying to see if growth will be accelerated. If you see over the last 6 months, we are actually seeing a trend reverse compared to what we expected from December to March, April to now. Risks to economic recovery have shifted to geopolitical tensions and their fallouts, which include inflation, slower export growth on account of decelerating global growth, and high commodity prices. Interest rates are rising in developed economies, introducing additional volatility and impacting investor appetite. To be sure, the global economic outlook has worsened since the geopolitical situation. In March this year, S&P Global had projected global GDP growth to slow to 3.6% on year in calendar 2022 compared with 6% in 2021. There is further downside to this now because the outlook for key countries have been revised down in May. We heard the Fed a few days back, and I am sure this is going to have an impact on the growth of economies around the world. The Indian economy has been recovering gradually, and with the pandemic impact waning, the contact-based services which were hit the hardest during the pandemic have actually started rebounding. In this environment, we expect India's GDP to grow at 7.3% in the current fiscal, compared with our earlier forecast of 7.8%, with risk still tilted to the downside. So there is a sharp decrease, or a decrease, I would say, in terms of our own assessment from the time we were in December to now. We've heard the RBI governor share his perspective, and I would say that the current geopolitical situation and the clouds that we see could have an adverse impact on the potential growth for the current year. Our forecast hinges on a rebound of contact-based services, infrastructure-led spending by the government, and triggering of the long-delayed private investment cycle. If we just move to the next slide, on corporate India, our analysts actually use data on over 40,000 companies and ran our proprietary tool Quantix, which indicates corporate revenue will continue to grow in double digits, between 10 to 14% this fiscal. This is on the back of a solid 22 to 24% growth last fiscal, which was led by price hikes and pass-throughs in key sectors. We believe we should see some volume growth apart from price push. Consumption-linked sectors and construction sectors will be the key growth drivers. But the push from exports, which was supporting growth last fiscal, would be limited, given the higher interest rates, inflation, and slower growth across the global economies. The geopolitical conflict would limit the correction expected earlier in the prices of key commodities, and that would increase the input cost risk for various organizations. In a nutshell, that could save EBITDA margins from the high base of the past 2 years by 150 to 200 basis points in the current year. And it will be different across different industries depending on the raw materials that you are using. We see the credit profiles of larger organizations and companies remaining well balanced to support capital expenditure. A lot of key segments indicate utilizations may not necessarily trigger capex. However, PLI linked capex and the government's infra push could support a second year of double-digit investment growth. I am particularly encouraged by our government's moves on the environment front about our net zero goals. This will have a salutary effect on investments in the medium term. Around 22 to 25 lakh crore worth of investment would come up only in the green capex by 2030. If we move to the next slide, and what are in that backdrop, if we were to look at the pillars of risk that we are looking at a leadership level for any organization today, clearly we are going to have three of the major themes in front from a risk management space. First, there's major global disruptions coming in one after the other, starting with the pandemic, followed by the global conflict. The biggest risk of a company is faced from a large-scale disruption or a black swan event. They are rare, unpredictable, and have severe consequences potentially. What's worse, these come through as obvious in hindsight. The inherent nature of a systemic risk makes it difficult, even impossible, to predict it. But an early warning system can identify and flag potential risk events. If you just look at the pandemic, it started off in China. There were, I would say, earlier months when you could pick up that signal that possibly this could spread and start thinking and planning. Organizations which started doing that, maybe they were a little better prepared than a lot of other organizations who were caught unaware. So I think early warning is something which is an important, which good organizations will start thinking about. That said, one of the softer issues involved in predicting systemic risk is that the outcome is materialization of a probabilistic event. We point to early warning signals because it happened. Had it not happened, we would not be talking about these. So clearly, I think we have to recognize the challenge. But at the same time, I think I would say that sometimes you have to think the impossible. Company boards are expected to exercise objective independent judgment in managing and mitigating risk factors. And while prediction is not always possible, a proactive risk management and a scenario simulation exercise will enable preparedness and response to a systemic risk. I think simulation exercises have been something which have been used by some organizations, and in a very, very nice way. It is the response to such a risk that is going to determine the success of a risk management function. Early detection and the ability to respond is what is going to be critical. I think boards need to ensure appropriate systems are in place to monitor and evaluate global disruptions. These systems should be robust to capture risk, not just traditional risk, but all risk. For instance, the risk of logistics disruption had not been factored in many models. In 2021, the Suez Canal was blocked for 6 days and 7 hours. Every hour of that disruption cost $400 million, and every day it took to clear the obstruction was an opportunity loss of $9 billion worth of goods. This caused price escalation and inflation impacting the entire global supply chain. High prices and lack of availability of containers significantly impacted global trade during the pandemic. I mean, even at pricing of 5, 6, 7 times, you were not able to get containers, and your entire supply chain was impacted, whether it is getting raw materials or being able to deliver to your customers. Aligning forecast assumptions with evolving market dynamics. I think from a strategy design and execution, we have never been more important other than this times of uncertainty and disruption. Both executives and boards need to confront a changing marketplace, engage in a more inclusive conversation, weigh benefits and risk in the face of uncertainty. The back end of 2021 saw great attrition and war for talent. A significant number of companies were caught unaware coming out of lower attrition during pandemic. So we at pandemic, all of us were in a situation where there was hardly any attrition. Suddenly we found a surge in attrition picking up across organizations while we were coming out of the pandemic. I think some will have to be factored in terms of ability to catch that signal and really factor that as a part of our ability to respond to that. Ensuring flexibility to adopt innovative business models and processes. Heightened uncertainty, potential game-changing advances in technology, adoption of non-traditional business models, and other external focus such as changing demographics and geopolitical pressures are all transforming the business environment. Companies which can innovate successfully have a strong competitive advantage. The agenda of boards should afford more time to discuss innovation and possible disruption in future plans and spend less time discussing routine execution of existing plans. We have seen disruption in models, in business models, and technology-led disruption. Fostering capabilities either organically or through partnerships and acquisitions. Evaluate existing leadership capabilities and investment capacity to innovate and diversify. Organizations are coming up with innovative alliances such as the Toyota and Suzuki partnership, where they have formed a strategic partnership and shared a vehicle platform. You find industry players, you find competitors coming together and forming an alliance. Conducting crisis simulations to test the effectiveness of recovery. A plan is only a plan unless you put it to test. One of the ways to earn that confidence is with a program of effective multidimensional simulation that tests your board, your C-suite, and the organizations that stand behind them. An effective crisis simulation puts the organization to a stringent test. Whether or not the scenario represents the worst case, it demands the right questions and the right responses. A potential cyber incident could be a good scenario to simulate. How would your organization react? Are you prepared? Do you understand the roles? Do you have a role play? I think these are some of the things which will help in having effective risk management. Diversifying supply chain and securing raw material supplies. I think the pandemic and the current geopolitical situation have bared the chinks in the supply chains. During the pandemic, we witnessed a severe shortage of active pharmaceutical ingredients, semiconductor chips impacting major industries. With lockdowns impacting supply chain and movement of goods, vendor concentration risk and sole dependence were tested during the pandemic and geopolitical crisis. Some of these will have to be looked at, will have to be challenged. Some of these myths will have to be questioned to determine how resilient your supply chain is and how you are as an organization from a business continuity perspective. If we just move on to the next pillar of risk is the technology and digitalization risk. And I would say the technology risk. Organizations are addressing cyber implications of the accelerated technology and digital transformation thrust upon them in response to the pandemic. You had employees work from home or remote locations. You had laptops or desktops getting attached to networks from outside. Are we as an organization prepared for that? What is the risk that we are carrying for a situation like that? It is imperative for the boards to review frequently and in detail the information security and the cyber risk the organization is exposed to. The board plays an integral role in ensuring that data and information systems in the organization are insulated from cyber risk, which include data leakage, info security breach, hacking, ransomware, and denial of distribution and service attacks, among others. Technology risks require addressing both from a revenue generation or a service provisioning perspective and from a cost of operation. How do you reach your clients? What is the experience that you are giving them? How are you automating your own processes? Are all part of technology risk. Materialization of technology risk can often exact a huge cost, both financially and on a business operation. Another key aspect of cyber security that the board should be aware is of the third party vendor risk the company might be exposed to. It should be kept in mind that an organization's security posture is only as robust as its weakest vendor. It is important that the boards be aware of progress organizations are making across their tech and digitalization agenda. Boards can then establish governance for these initiatives to ensure that projects get delivered on time, with sufficient quality, within budgets, while providing consistent, accurate, and complete data and solutions. So, what can boards do effectively to address the tech and the digitalization risk? Coordinate across subdisciplines of IT risk management. Most organizations have established groups to manage some or all of the various realms in which technology risk can pop up. The board should ensure that these groups work seamlessly and together to deliver value. Invest in specialized talent. Technology risk management requires critical thinking and hands-on experience in technology, business, and risk. Technology is in itself evolving. It is becoming futuristic. Do we have the right skilled talent to understand where technology is going? What is the risk that it is providing to the organization, to the infrastructure that you have, to the applications that you are running? Do we understand that to be able to address them? If I move to the third pillar of risk, and this is from a larger purpose of an organization, sustainability. The sustainability risks are uncertain on the social or environment events or conditions that can have a significant negative impact on the company. Of course, governance, financial viability, and this will relate to the ESG practices of the business, its strategy, the sector in which it operates, the locations where we operate in. There could be opportunities available to an organization because of changing social and environmental factors. Across industries, board of directors grapple with the need to define a strategy and implement a plan that answers questions related to sustainability for decades. How do you create a plan which looks at longevity of an organization as an institution for the next few decades, not for the next few years? The board needs to articulate a vision and ask the company around how the firm will respond to potential disruptions on the environment side caused by physical climate risks such as water stress, weather events, cyclones, hurricanes, floods. We have seen frequency of these events happening and at times when you least expect it, at locations where you would not expect it. So boards need to stay updated on changing regulations around the carbon pricing, pollution norms, global best practices, and ensure capital allocations in new energy and water efficient technologies and equipment. Sustainability, if viewed from a market opportunity and value creation perspective, can ensure that the business model of the company is in line with the changing times and that the company can meet the expectations of the large pool of ESG capital available that needs to be deployed both globally and domestically. Important considerations around risk emanating from employee well-being, customer satisfaction, supply chain management also needs to be discussed and tracked at the highest levels of the company. Globally, we are already seeing millennials spurring ESG investing as well as voicing their views on where their money is being invested or how their products are being sourced as a customer. These are using social media platforms to seek a more equal and inclusive society. Board diversity in itself is an aspect that will help address the inclusion scenario. However, our analysis of 600 corporates show that 65% of the companies have boards that are majorly non-independent. Average share of women directors in 2021 across the 600 companies was at 18%. 12% of the companies had no independent women director at all. Gender diversity in India was 14% in fiscal 2021. This was far below the global gender diversity at the workplace of 39%. According to S&P Global Boards, should ensure that ESG is implemented in a holistic way across the organization and its supply chain. Holistic ESG implication is the key to driving essential changes in a consistent manner. Setting the tone at the top is crucial to infuse the culture across the organization and value chains. Capability building can be done through appropriate training and on-the-job learning. The board should also ensure that effective corporate governance practices are followed right at the top, starting from the composition of the board, its committees, gender diversity on the board, aligning CEO pay with financial growth, linking executive pay with sustainability targets, as well as ensuring directors bring the right skill sets and the technical expertise to guide the company in the right direction with appropriate roadmaps. Where required, you can reach out to experts from outside, but let's make sure you have a holistic view. Dedicated time should be set aside for board discussions in all listed companies so that ESG risk, opportunities, and capital allocations are discussed at the highest level, with accountability given to an appropriate leader, whether it's director or a management executive. Finally, a few key takeaways. I think integrated risk management has emerged as an imperative for independent directors. There is a need for independent directors to upskill and keep themselves abreast of market developments and emerging trends. The world is evolving, the environment is evolving. You are seeing things which you didn't expect it to happen. I think there's a need for all of us to make sure that we keep abreast with the and keep pace with what is happening outside. Have an outside in perspective. The board needs to develop capability within the organization to ensure we have sustainable growth and appropriate risk guardrails or modes to manage business continuity to be resilient when there is a risk which is playing out. Finally, the board should focus on key strategic initiatives and execution with milestones and periodic updates. I think with this, I've tried to share a perspective in terms of, the environment, tried to cover some broad themes as we see, playing out. We'll be happy to take, any questions or any discussion points that the members on the call would like. But I would like to, end my presentation here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for this session. And our members can take your questions.
Go ahead.
Please take your questions.
Shall I?
Yes, please.
A very insightful session, Mr. Mehta. I am also an independent director. My two questions. One is on the macroeconomy aspect of it. You touched upon the rising inflation now. There is a perception that half our economy is run by black money, even today. Now, how much impact you think RBI's tinkering with the rates will rein in the inflation? That was one question. Then coming back to the board, from your presentation, I understand risk management today is becoming more a core competency of any organization, regardless of any business. How does the board equip itself with the kind of skills? These are two questions. Thank you.
Sure. I think let me try and address the first question in terms of steps from inflation management, right? I think you are going to need a holistic approach. One approach won't work. So RBI has taken steps on the monetary side by increasing interest rates, signaling to the market that it needs the prices need to come down. It will have an impact. It could have an impact on growth, but the government at the same time has also brought down excise duties on some of the products which are fueling that inflation, right? On petroleum products, to try and see how they can help bring the prices down, which could help eventually address fuel inflation. On the food inflation, I think again, fertilizer subsidy. So I think there are steps being taken, right? If you look at different components of inflation, what is being fueled today is the food inflation, fuel inflation, right? And then of course there are other elements out there on the inflation, and steps are being taken across different parameters to help address that. Our sense is you will see an impact. It will come with a lag. You will see an impact, because some of these measures, you've also seen like export duty on some steel products, right? Which means you will have more available in the market here. So uh, I think there are various steps being taken by the government, and companies will have to respond to those measures. And we are hoping that with a lag, you will see an impact playing out from an inflation perspective. On the second question on risk management, I think clearly for all of us, it's just not for directors. I can tell you for leaders across the ecosystem, we will have to learn to unlearn and relearn. Okay, I mean, I think the need for unlearning and relearning has actually gone up for all of us, and which would mean be more aware of what is happening outside. Because if I have to really respond, I need to be open to understanding what is changing in the scenario and how it could impact. And I'll give you one example that, how many companies in financial services would expect that maybe a Google or an Amazon or, a fintech will disrupt. I don't think if you had seen a risk map of some of these institutions few years back, they would have taken these companies or these organizations as possibly as competition. So you really need to think when you are looking at your competition. One is what is visible to you, right? Direct competition. Second is what is not visible to you, but could potential be a disruptor and a competitor to you. You don't know where it is going to come from. But I think this is where we will have to start really thinking as leaders and as board members. Are we asking those questions to ourselves? And believe me, I think that's why I said it's a unlearning relearning journey. It is not something which, I mean, whatever level of experience you might have had, because the way things are playing out, the scenarios which are being playing out, these are unprecedented. Nobody expected a pandemic and that the entire country will be locked down. I mean, I have a business continuity plan which says, okay, one city is closed for something, I will work from a different city. If that state is closed, I'll work from a different state. If one country is closed, I'll work from an international location. Nobody expected that across the globe you will not be able to move, you will not be able to trade. I mean, so these are really unprecedented scenarios, and everything was retested. So, I would say from a risk management perspective, all of us will have to really be open, be ready to hear perspectives, be ready to learn from outside. There are experts outside. You don't know everything. So be open about it. I mean, I don't see any harm in trying to hear perspectives from different and learn from other companies. There are companies who have done it better than you, maybe. Learn from them. There's no harm in that.
Yeah. Any other question?
Can I come in?
Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I'm Subramaniam Vaidya, sir, speaking from US. I have come for about 3 months or so. I've been witnessing this, and Ashish, sir, you have given a best perspective from your side. But I was interested in knowing, you mentioned about some simulation areas which can really face the challenge of risk management. Which are those areas where do you think that it will not disrupt the actual management, at the same time try to teach the people what exactly is the risk areas?
Oh, I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, some things that, we have looked at. I mean, I can give you multiple examples. So let's say cyber risk, and I spoke about cyber risk, right? So there could be an event where your systems could be attacked. I mean, you could have a ransomware. You need to simulate that to see how will you respond. What is it that you will do when something like that happens. Are all the important players clear about their roles and responsibilities? Let's say today, you are sitting in an office and that office becomes incommunicado for whatever reason. Either power is not there, your systems are down, you have a data center failure. Does the organization know how to respond? You might be working on a real-time basis. I think, let's say a large incident happens. The teams who are in the front, are they able to respond to that event? You will have media there, you will have regulators there, right? Have you really made sure that everybody understands their role? If, let's say, your leadership team is on a flight when something happens, right, on a long distance flight, and something goes wrong, do the next level or do the people know, how they need to respond? Because world is not going to wait. Today, you have real time information available. Something happens, the entire world comes to know real time. You will have media, you will have, and they want your response real time. So,
Right.
do we really prepare ourselves? And that is where the scenario planning, the scenario analysis comes in. I mean, companies, let's say, who have concentration risk of clients. Let's say your 30, 40, 50% business is coming from one client. For whatever reason, that is going to get stopped. What happens to your business? Do you even plan for that? I mean, I think those are some of the tough questions which we'll have to ask ourselves. And I think this is where doing little bit of role play, little bit of scenario planning will help.
Right. Right.
Sir Mehta sir, I, I I have a question. Shall I present it?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sir, actually, I think you have very beautifully summarized the key takeaways in your last slide. And as per my understanding, it is for the entire board members, like integrated enterprises, risk management practice, dynamic operating environment. You should have the adaptability and then best in class governance practices and key key strategic initiative. From an independent director point of view, sir, it's an entire board which need to take the responsibility or the strategy for the entire thing. But as an independent director, what is your role in this entire practices to avoid or to mitigate the risk which is evolving in different manners on day-to-day basis?
I would say you are an equal partner, right? I mean, as a board member, each one is equal, and you carry that ability, and you should have the ability to ask the right questions, because unless you ask, you will not push the teams to think beyond. So my and my experience, I've been on boards for many years. I think my experience has been that you can actually draw the best experience out of your board members if you allow them that ability to ask that tough question. Lot of times as management, I would feel, oh, if my board member is going to ask me a tough question, if I am not able to respond, how will they see me, what will happen, they'll think the company is not prepared. But to be very honest, I would rather have that and prepare myself going forward, then be under the comfort that everything is okay. So I would say, as an independent director, as an independent board member, and then as it is board member or as a leader, the biggest contribution one can do is ask the right questions, not get worried. And if you feel, and it could be a wildest thought, it doesn't matter. Like I said, pandemic has really opened up. Uh, I'll give you one example. I mean, all of us saw crude prices going up in the period 2007-8, right? The prices actually went from $30-40 to 130-140. Earlier, crude prices used to move in $10, at best $20 in a year. It never moved beyond that. In that 12-month period, I think we saw fluctuation from $30-40 to $130-140. And the question which at that point of time, we were thinking is, will crude touch $200? And what would it mean if it touches $200? What sort of situation will we lead to? Will there be shortages? Will countries, clamp down? Will people be asked to not travel in vehicles at all? So I think asking those questions, and it could mean very ridiculous, honestly. A lot of people, when we started having that dialogue, said it is ridiculous, how can you even think about that? But that's what keeps you prepared, that's what makes you think forward. So I would say, don't get worried about asking the right question, however ridiculous it might seem at that time.
Right, sir. Thank you.
And Gopal Krishna.
Dear members, due to time limitation, we can't take more questions. So thank you for attending this event. And thank you, Amish sir, for sparing your valuable time for IACA and our members. Thank you, sir, again.
Thank you.
And thank you to all members who joined this event. Thank you.